Hello, my name is John Marcotte. I founded a group called Heroic Girls to promote gender equality through the use of pop culture, because I have two daughters. I feel like I always have to explain what I'm doing here so people don't wonder why the middle-aged white guy is talking about feminism. So, middle-aged white guy mansplains feminism is a horrible title for a panel, so tonight we're going to talk about women in horror and how horror movies can empower women. And I found a really cool, statistic to set the scene, all right? In 2017, Google and the Gina Davis Institute on Gender and Media reported that horror was the only genre where women appear on screen more than men, 53%. It's the only one in which, it is the one in which they are heard the most. They're heard 47% of the time. Not quite parody, but really close and way ahead of almost every other genre. When I watched movies like The Goonies and E.T., it was boys having adventures, said Diablo Cody, who wrote Jennifer's Body. When I watched Nightmare on Elm Street, it was Nancy beating up Freddy. It was that simple. So that's kind of the whole premise of this panel. We're going to talk a little bit with these women who have much more educated opinions than I do on this subject about how horror movies and horror roles can empower women. So I'm going to just take a moment. We're going to go down the panel and let everyone introduce themselves and where you might know them from. So.
Thank you. Thank you guys for being here. I'm Jocelin Donahue. Been in several horror films, including House of the Devil, Insidious Chapter 2, and Summer Camp. And coming out this fall with Alex, we have Dr. Sleep.
Hello, my name is Alex Essoe. I was in a movie called Starry Eyes, maybe some of you, and thank you. You're the one who saw it. and some other horror movies as well, and Jocelyn and I are in Dr. Sleep this fall, which we're super crazy psyched about.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Molly Elfman. I'm mainly a horror producer. I own a company called Fun Size Horror, which we produce short-form horror content that hopefully gets taken and turned into features, TV series, and whatnot. And we've also done, I think, over 250 short films. I think I've produced about 45 of them, and I think 7 anthologies. I don't know, a lot. But yeah, we're always looking for new voices. I started as an actor back in the day and wanted to empower my life, so I started producing. Little did I know that that would not empower it, but just make a lot more problems. But I get to, I mainly champion only female directors. I have one token male, but he has a good reason. But other than that, yeah, it's all about getting new perspectives, because without new perspectives and new people and supporting those people, we're never actually going to change the world, and that's what we have to do. So.
Hi, I am Alaina Huffman. I recently just did a film called The Perfection. It's out on Netflix. It's my first horror film. And then other than that, I am known for Supernatural, where I play the Queen of Hell, which is horror-ish. Yeah.
I'm Elena's +1 to most things at Comic-Con and in life. I too am in Supernatural. I would love to be the Queen of Hell. I haven't made it there yet. And I'm here to learn something today. As someone who gets very scared watching horror, I find it easier to act in horror than watch it. So I'm interested to see in what ways it can be empowering and the stories that we can tell that will empower women moving forwards.
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we are short one tonight. Heidi Honeycutt, who is one of the principals behind the Etheria Film Night, which promotes women in horror and fantasy, particularly directors, looking to find their work, promote it, give them awards, give them a little boost in the industry, and raise their profile, because acting is one thing, but behind the lens is a whole other thing as far as hitting gender parity in Hollywood. There aren't very many female directors and producers, so we're very sad she's not here, but we're going to move on. Okay. I wanted to start out just by a real easy one. Who were your horror idols when you started out in the business? Were there people, women in particular, that were doing good work in horror that you said, that's someone that I could follow, someone that I look up to? Anyone?
My first two horror memories, women-wise, was Sissy Spacek as Carrie, and also the girl, whoever it was, in Firestarter. And I was traumatized by both those films. I remember also seeing The Omen when I was 8. I was too young to see that. Now that I look back, it's interesting that my other films that I loved were Flash Gordon, Superman, all these male-centric films where many people are killed in different ways, just not in horror ways. And that's part of what I think is interesting, how we can watch a male action hero. Now we have more female action heroes. We can watch men shoot each other up, but when it's a woman stabbing somebody maliciously, somehow that's horror. When mass massacre with machine guns in action film isn't.
I think it's tough to
Controversial straight away, sorry.
it's tough to have a lot of role models because there's not a lot from when we were kids, to be honest. You know, it's not necessarily straight horror, but for me, Caroline Thompson, who wrote Nightmare Before Christmas, and Edward Scissorhands, which isn't quite horror, but I remember being very inspired by somebody who could write something that was so outside of the box and original, and I remember wanting to know who was behind those, and finding this woman that I thought was kind of... I think the reason why Tim Burton honestly was able to start his career was because of the strong women behind him who were writing things that nobody had ever heard. And so he may have a vision for it, but it started with a woman's voice.
Anyone else have anybody that comes to mind?
Yeah.
Anyone at all? I mean,
I mean, of course, we have like the touchstones of Nancy and Nightmare on Elm Street, and we have Laurie from Halloween, and beyond that, I really love Jodie Foster and Silence of the Lambs. That was something, I think it just hit at the right age as well, like to see someone who is ambitious in a man's world and also kept her calm and her composure and had the smarts and the intelligence and the determination. She was like such a great match for the villain in that movie, and that really stuck with me.
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, so good. I've had like one role model since I was 10, and that is Tank Girl. And I would recommend her. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. She's the greatest role model. I'll recommend her to anybody.
Did you say Tank Girl?
Yeah, Tank Girl.
Thank girl.
Oh my God, Lori Petty is the ultimate.
Just fantastic.
That's you want to empower yourself. Just watch that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I grew up, I lived in Japan a lot, and there were like 3 VHS tapes, this is dating myself, in my apartment that I lived in, and one of them was Tank Girl. The other one was Abs of Steel and Buns of Steel. Between workouts and doing homework and working, I watched Tank Girl all the time. That's awesome. That's rad.
So, yeah, I think Clarice Starling is my all-time favorite. I could just go on and no one would want to hear that, but I could, about what a fantastic film that is, and about how no man in the movie treats her as an equal at all, except for Hannibal Lecter. He's the only one that treats her like a human being, is to the mass-murdering serial killer, Hannibal Lecter. But, okay. Are there, we talked about particular actresses. Are there any movies that you think have done a good job at representing women on screen, horror or otherwise, but that you look at that movie and you say, hey, they did a good job. It's not exploitative. It's not, leading down the wrong path. What horror movies do you think have actually done a good job of presenting women for everyone?
Well, one of my favorites that I've watched for a long time is The Orphanage, which is, it's amazing performances, amazing character, and is about a mother, and is about a mother's worst fears in many ways, but is so honestly depicted and so empowering in an odd way. And I just remember it was one of the first films that I saw that I felt I understood the character. I went with it. It just felt so genius. And also, I was so terrified. And then I ended the film just completely in tears. And I was just like, please, more of this. Just beautiful.
Has anyone seen Midsummer yet?
Yeah.
I've been wanting to see it. I haven't made it. Okay.
Still getting over.
I know. I'm not ready to
I've
talk
heard
about it yet.
Okay. It just looks really pretty, too.
It is
beautiful.
beautiful.
Beautiful film.
I think Florence Pugh is an amazing new actress. and
wonderful.
Type of actress, having seen
Yeah.
her as Lady Macbeth, which is a kind of, has elements of thriller and horror in it. And she's so kind of pugnacious and working class and slightly thick and normal and brilliant. I think she's just, and so how cool that she's got that role in Midsummer. And it makes sense of her trauma. That, to me, that is an empowering movie in a way, where she suffers trauma. She has this rubbish boyfriend. Am I going to spoil the movie for people who haven't seen it?
Who's seen it in the audience? Oh,
Yeah, well,
Be careful.
anyway, it's, yeah. It works out well for
Spoilers.
the people it should work out well for.
So we actually touched on this a little bit ago about women behind the camera, and I wanted to read a quote from Jason Blum from Blumhouse, who's probably the biggest name in horror right now. This is what he said, and then had to walk back the next day really quickly, but he said, "There are not a lot of female directors, period, and even less who are inclined to do horror." So what do you guys think of that statement? Is there a lack of female directors in the sense that they don't exist, or is there a lack of female directors being given opportunity?
There is no lack of female directors, and if you want to have more female directors, you have to make space for them. And the problem is that there's not really an entry point. And consistently, I have many, many female directors who are consistently told by many of these studios that they have to have a film under their belt. They have to have something that they don't have, while I see many male directors being given budgets to make their first film. It is unfair also that females feel like they have to be the perfect director when there are many shit films being made by men consistently. So I'd like to see more half-assed films from female directors. No, just there shouldn't be so much fear about the entry point, and I do feel like, by the way, that is changing. But it is a slow thing. It is just starting to get there. The meetings are starting to happen, and I do feel like that is partially because of films like Midsommar and some of these, I think a lot of Mike Flanagan's work has also been very helpful, but films that are weird, different, promote females in the films, and because they are outside of the box, people are looking for, okay, our algorithms aren't working, we need something outside of the box. So what is that? And they're looking for voices that they haven't heard, and thank God. And a lot of those are opening doors.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, I feel like what you're saying is like men are hired on potential and women are hired on proof. And that when you do need someone to open the gate for you, that can be a tough barrier. And it is so important to have women as writers and storytellers and creators. We focus a lot, I think, on representations of women in media, but that's also important as like your experience on set. So if you're a young PA who wants to be a director, then you need to see a woman who's an AD or who's a director in order to aspire to that. Or if you're, a prop master and you want to be a production designer, it's important to see female department heads. So just in the same way that representation matters in character, it matters on set and the experience that you have on set.
I'd like to point out that this is something that everyone here can help with, because when we look at my kind of world comes from superhero movies, that's where, my bread and butter is. But when they made Wonder Woman, there just wasn't even a consideration. They knew they had to have a female director to direct this female property. They did the same thing with Captain Marvel. And I think in a strange way, actually, Jordan Peele, his past few films have proven that having that connection with the source material really helps and can make it, they're proving the point that getting people that actually have different life experiences behind the camera can really pay big benefits in the box office, and if the audience demands it and says, I'm not going to go see this movie unless, I know that it's coming from an authentic place, I think that we can make more movies with female directors, with people of color.
Just to add to that, because I went to the Wonder Woman Q&A, a BAFTA Q&A with the director, and what's interesting, and I think I'm accurate in that saying that that's true and that's the case, but they were still given the lowest budget.
Yeah, that is absolutely true, but they made a lot of money, so the next one's going to... The next one will get a bigger budget. That gave leverage for the next one. I mean, again, they're demanding proof from the women, but at least there was some opportunity there, and it was there was no question. If they put out Wonder Woman and they had a man direct it, there would have been an outcry. We know that. And maybe we need to extend that outcry a little further for other types of projects.
Yeah, but you are right. That is actually a very good point, is that a lot of the budgets that women are getting are so much lower that when their films don't succeed as much, it's like, well, also make sure that they have the same opportunities.
Yeah.
You have to make sure that the playing field is equal if you actually want to see if it's equal.
Well, and then, just to add salt to the wound, then they're actually exploiting the fact that they're hiring females, right? And then promoting it, and it's very
And it's true in
interesting.
television as well. Hearsay tells me the same thing.
Yeah, of
female,
course, of
female
course.
directors doing the same job are being paid less than their male contemporaries
Almost always.
as we speak.
And yet, ironically, I will say that I feel like there are so many women in power in Hollywood, like producers, heads of studios and networks. There's a lot of women in power. So it's an opportunity for us to really support each other. But I also feel like what you're doing is you go and make your own content, and I can't expect someone to tell my story. So I'm going to tell my story better than anyone else is going to tell my story. And I feel like if, we need to be given the opportunity, but we also maybe need to be forceful with it.
Awesome. So naturally, horror movies in general are going to have some violence against women as integral to the plot most of the time. How do you guys, in individual cases, draw the line between what you think is essential and integral to the story that's being told, and in which cases it might become exploitative or transgressive in some fashion where it's not appropriate? I'm sure that's a question that comes up when you're making decisions about these kind of projects. So how do you draw those lines when you're looking at a movie and going, boy, look at all the awful things that are happening to my character? Is this okay? So anybody want to comment on that kind of thing?
Well, I mean, is it a part of the story or not? I mean, is it there just for some kind of perverse gratification, or is it justified by the script?
Right.
And it's pretty, I mean, I don't want to speak for anyone, but I'm assuming when you get a script and you read it, you're like, yeah, that's my character dies in the middle of having sex in the first 5 minutes of the movie. Probably more exploitative in nature than
I jumped the gun, I think, maybe on a project the year before. I really haven't historically had very many auditions, which is hard for people to understand when they see me as one of the longest running women in one of the longest running shows on television. But so to have only 2 or 3 opportunities that year and to turn one of them down, whereby I was going to be brutally murdered, I don't know, there was just something in me where if this is the only other project I'm going to do this year, I don't think that's what I want it to be.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like a point-by-point basis, whereas my character has been burned to death in my show, but I also knew she was going to save herself. I also knew what the payoff was going to be.
There. Yeah, exactly.
I haven't had to do this for a while, and I was saying I don't know that I actually ever was a scream queen even when I did act, because I was always a serial killer. I got a typecast for a while, and I don't think they were wrong. But sorry.
No, it's true. I always get cast as someone who beats people to death.
Yeah, they kind of.
Just my luck, I guess.
Yes, but no, I do think that there's it's very hard, and it's funny because the film that Karen and I are hopefully going to be making next is called Axe Wound, and it's about the horror conventions, and it's about a scream queen, and it's about what happens to the psyche of a woman when literally. I think the problem is there's violence in horror films consistently. Why is it that when this man is going to attack her, this woman needs to be in her underwear, and the most violent scene that you're going to be sexually provoked by is horrific and graphic, and that you can have graphic scenes. We've seen many of those. You can have sex scenes if there is a good reason. Why do scenes that are naturally graphic and exploitative, why do you need to tie those two things together? And also, what does that do to the psyche of the people that you're asking to do that? I think that nowadays on set, it's a very different procedure. You talk to people, you talk ahead of time. A lot of times there's many stories, which is something that we're basing this off of, where actresses were consistently pushed to a point where they were not comfortable, and yet they thought that their careers would be taken away from them. And again, that goes down to abuse of power, which is in any film, it can be male, female, it doesn't really matter. If you're abusing power, that's a problem. Yeah, I don't know. I think hiring more women helps, and it's so funny. I just worked on a crew with all female department heads, female director, female actresses, and everybody's like, "Oh yeah, do you have to fight?" And I was like, "I didn't fight with anybody the entire time. In fact, we all just talked to each other and we worked together, had wine at the end of the day. It was great. It was really nice. It's like I think that it's changing, but I think it's important to talk about it and not just say like we're not going to do it, but why were those things done and how do you change that?"
And I think there is a time and a place for those things to be shown, whereby we are showing that they are exploitative. There is a.
Oh, you're going to love our movie.
Yeah.
I wanted to help you out, Molly, because you name dropped a first name there. You said Karen. And
Oh, Karen Gillan.
Karen Gillan.
Karen Gillan, who I love. Yeah, I produced 2 shorts, and then we just did a feature, and this feature, Axe Wound, will be based off the short film Conventional, which we made 3 years ago. Yeah, I'm excited. It's very fun.
And just to piggyback on the conversation, it is true, anyone could get attacked by a serial killer when they're in their underwear, but only women seem to get attacked by a serial killer when they're in their underwear. But somehow the guys always manage to have their clothes on, so just food for thought.
Those serial killers do tend to attack women in their underwear.
Yeah, I guess that's
That's they're most vulnerable.
I guess that-
Kind of wait for that.
that is a fair point. You countered me there, and I can't argue that point.
Yeah.
It's not a horror movie, but I just recently rewatched Mad Max with Charlize Theron, and that has to be one of my. On second viewing, I loved it even more than the first time, and how like they don't kiss. They respect each other. It's not even about her being a woman, him being a guy. It's like when they go to take the shot and he can't really. They've got 3 bullets or 3 rockets, and he does the first one and he misses, and without saying anything, just passes it to her, and she's like, "Don't move," and gets it just because she's the best person for the job. And I think that movie, the whole auditorium cheered when that happened. We're so desperate for that equality to be on our screens. We're desperate
To be given
for
the
it.
shot.
Yeah.
Literally.
So horror movies have traditionally been made with male audiences in mind. What kinds of things scare women that we don't get to see on screen as much? I mean, are there types of horror that we don't get to see as often that we should be seeing? Because I looked this up. It's actually a true statistic. Women make up half the population. So
51%.
51%. They're the majority minority. So are there opportunities to tell horror stories that would appeal to women that we're missing because we're constantly writing movies that are aimed at male audiences, filming scenes that are directed for the male gaze? What are we missing that women might like in horror that we haven't seen a lot of?
Truth. What's happening in our world? I feel like that was interesting because when I read the script for The Perfection, you read a script and it's sometimes hard to picture, and there's a big chunk of the script that takes place on a bus, and I'm like, this could go one of 2 ways. But one of the things that drew me to it was Allison Williams was attached to it, and I was reading it with that in mind, thinking she had just done Get Out, and I was thinking, like, what was the draw? And it's about female empowerment. It's about abuse of power from a man to younger women. And so it was interesting because it was Miramax's first film back from getting rid of the Weinsteins, and then and we were shooting it during this Me Too movement, and so I think it's just reality, is telling our actual stories, and it's not directly related, but it's abuse of power.
Mm-hmm. Chris Pine getting murdered in his underwear. Because that's just as bad, right? That's just the same thing. You know what I mean? Like, I'm flipping, but it's the same.
But I do feel like actually when Wonder Woman came out, and we had this panel a couple of years ago when Wonder Woman came out, and I was actually like intimidated. I was like, oh my God, this is what it was like to grow up with Superman and Batman as male heroes. Like, it's a lot of pressure. She looks amazing. We don't look like that.
Well, yeah, there's something there. Wonder Woman scared me just from the fact that if Wonder Woman failed for any reason, any reason at all, we were going to wait another 10 or 15 years. We saw the emails when they leaked out. They said Catwoman and Elektra, they're awful movies. They didn't point out that they were given horrible budgets, they didn't have good scripts, that they weren't particularly well directed. It's not like they made these classic movies that nobody wanted to watch. The movies had lots of problems. I thought if Wonder Woman doesn't do well, it took Marvel 21 movies before they decided to have a female lead. So there was so much pressure on Wonder Woman, I'm so happy that they got it right.
Yeah.
Well, with Wonder Woman, too, if you want to see the difference between a male gaze and a female gaze, watch Wonder Woman and then watch Justice League. I couldn't believe, I looked at that outfit and I'm like, I never noticed her boobs ever in Wonder Woman, nor did I care. She was amazing and kick-ass. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, why did this change? It's like, why did this need to? And it's a female director capturing a woman, empowered, who's beautiful, who can be seen as all these different things, and then let's shoot up her skirt. And it's just like, oh, there you go.
There you
That's
go.
the difference.
As women are the protagonists of horror movies really often, and bad things happen to them, and then hopefully they triumph in the end, although it depends on which movie you're watching. Is there an opportunity, and how do we make sure we take advantage of it, to ask men to empathize with what women are going through a horror movie, rather than take perverse pleasure in the exploitative nature of it, take pleasure in the pain? How do we get guys to be on the woman's side, empathizing with the struggles that they're going through in a film, rather than just go like kind of cheering when she gets stabbed?
I had an actor this week conjecture with me that is the reason that horror works so well, is that men find it easier to connect to the pain and the vulnerability and the fear that they're seeing on the screen when it's portrayed by a woman. That actually there's a channel there, a release there.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's interesting. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I feel like if the protagonist is a female, which, as you mentioned in your intro, like happens more often in horror films, you're structurally in the story, you're kind of forced to identify with whoever is leading you on that journey. So when there are more chances for a man to identify with a woman, whatever terror she's experiencing, they will start to understand more, and that will come from more female storytellers just naturally.
So,
And also,
sorry. Go ahead. No, go.
no, you go.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, we're talking about a very specific type of horror movie, too. I mean,
Right.
we are discussing slashers with a final girl trope.
Right.
But there's existential horror, there's sci-fi horror, there's stuff. I mean, I would consider David Lynch horror to an
Oh, yeah.
extent, and I love his female protagonists. They're
Right.
so multidimensional, they're flawed, they make mistakes, they're extremely dynamic. They're all individuals, and there's a true variety to all of them,
I think it's common with a lot of genres, and horror is certainly not immune to it. When something becomes good enough, they start sliding it out of the genre category and said, oh, it's not horror anymore, this is drama, or
Right.
Silence of the Lambs is actually an excellent example of that.
Totally.
You won't find it in the horror section usually, it'll be under drama.
Yeah, or
I mean, a man's flayed to death and spread out like a butterfly halfway through that film. So I think it could easily be classified as horror, but most people, when given the choice, will classify it as drama. Genre films always have that trouble, whether it's science fiction or fantasy or horror.
Yeah.
If
Or like
you get too
something-
good, they want to move you out of the genre because they don't want to feel the genre is capable of supporting great work.
Right, but then, I mean, you also have stuff like The Babadook,
Oh,
which
yeah.
did very well,
Yep.
very truly scary movie, and then you have something that's...
You have The Witch.
The Witch was incredible, and then you have something gorgeous like A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night,
Yeah.
which is just so elevated and horrific and totally experimental.
Yeah, that movie was stunning, and it did have that female gaze. And like what I noticed about that movie too was like the kill scenes. Like there was something that did feel feminine about it, intimate,
Yes,
elegant,
exactly,
yeah,
yeah.
and just like slow and trippy and experiential in a way that I hadn't seen before. And even though she's kind of an invincible character, it's in the title, like A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night.
Yeah.
She's a vampire skateboarding down the street,
Yeah.
but you still feel that she's vulnerable.
Well,
because she's a
in
woman
Iran
alone
in the
on
middle
street.
of the night
Right.
after curfew, too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Did you
it's
see
like-
also Under the Shadow, which was
Yeah.
another?
That's actually one of my favorite. I got
And that's like a
and-
feminist fable.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, I was about to say, I actually think, and I agree, we're talking about a very specific area of genre where I actually think that most genre filmmaking is actually far ahead of where a lot of other genres are.
Absolutely.
And it's because people want weird, they want different, they want, and so there are tropes, there are things that people fall into, and that has been considered mainstream for a while. Mainstream is shifting, which is amazing. But I do think that at the same time, you've gotten some of the most amazing female perspectives, like you're just saying, because of that,
Totally,
because
yeah.
people reward it.
It's like the new frontier now for,
How do you all feel about The Handmaid's Tale? Would you classify that as horror in any way, shape, or form? 'Cause to me it's-
I actually can't watch him. I watched the first season. I watched into season 2, and I appreciate it, and I think it's great, and I love the characters and such fine filmmaking. I find it so hard after the 2016 election to watch that. I need a little bit. It's funny because I was talking about this with the horror that I make. All of a sudden, I started to need it to have a little bit of humor, and that I do want to talk about that subject matter, but I am already reading the news puts me in tears, and it's too hard for me to take. So yes, I think we need to discuss it, but I can't take it to that level of intensity all the time.
And it's kind of like what you were saying about what have we not seen that scares women. Like Handmaid's Tale is a great example of what we do see, which is controlling women's bodies and taking away their agency. But of course, that's why it's so primal and so effective always, but it is so dark. And like, that's why her quote, the Margaret Atwood quote about like, you know, men are scared that women will laugh at them and women are scared that men will kill them. Like that overlying threat that's always there. There's lots to explore there, and there's invisible ways that happens. And Handmaid's Tale is an example of how, like, an extremely visible way that it happens. But.
Yeah.
Handmaid's Tale, the comedy. Yeah. I was going to pitch that.
The musical.
We can do it. Come on, guys.
Top Hat and Tails.
Yeah.
There was that case in Alabama where the woman was shot and miscarried because she was shot, and they didn't put the guy who shot her in jail. They put the woman herself in jail because the fetus died. And I was like, oh my God! I mean, how can The Handmaid's Tale keep up with what's reality right now? It's kind of a frightening world out there. So let's shift off of that because I'm depressed now. We talked a little bit about how horror gives women the opportunity to be the protagonist, so I'd like to speak to at least I know that end of the table a little bit. How does getting to be the villain in a piece, which is also something that women are very infrequently given the opportunity to do, to be the true bad guy, how does that empower women when you get to be the baddie?
It's like getting paid to therapize yourself and entertain yourself, and it's the thing that I take away from my character is although I've got somebody that I've murdered pinned to the ceiling, I've never said the S word, the sorry word, and it's so empowering to play somebody who doesn't apologize and who is ruthless and formidable, and yet it's not always how I feel as an actress on set necessarily, but it is fantastic in the moment to do those things and to be given that position. And I love what the writers have given me in the last few years. There's been an evolution in Supernatural, I believe, in the last 5 years anyway, since I've been in the show, whereby I've saved myself. Everyone, when I got killed the first time, was like, so is Crowley going to save you? Is Crowley going to save you? And it was like, no. And so there is a consciousness in the writer's thinking, I think now, that didn't exist even 5-6 years ago. So I am all for it, and it's been the role of my life, and it's wonderful.
I think you're right. It's like the non-apologetic aspect of it. I remember not too long ago reading for a pilot this year, and it was a woman who was, she was like a commanding officer or something like that. And in a 2-page scene to her subordinate, she apologized 3 times. And I was reading the scene and I was trying to get it, and there was just something hiccuping every time, and I was like, what in the world is happening here? And I realized, I was like, it's so inauthentic to have this woman who's in power literally apologize to her subordinate, and it was like a passive-aggressive thing, and it took me out of the scene every time. I was unable to be powerful. Abaddon, comparatively, she didn't apologize for anything. I mean, she's a sociopath. But there is that. She's a really bad person. In fact, not a person at all. But yeah, just to not apologize. And actually, this is funny, because when I would show up like in Vancouver to shoot that film, I'd like get off the plane, and I would always joke that like I would get hit on more often. Like I never really get approached or hit on. And when I was there filming the show, dudes would like hit me up on the street, and I was like, what is going on? I was like, oh, it's Abaddon. Like that confidence that comes along with not apologizing and killing a lot of people. But yeah, it's very empowering. And I'd have people come up to me, I'm sure like they do to you all the time, like, oh my gosh, I love this character, she's so amazing. And there's a part of me that cringes a little, because I'm like, she's really bad. Maybe you shouldn't aspire to her, but there's aspects of it that are very empowering.
I want to float an idea out here, which is that I think I found something that scares men. I think men are scared of empowered women that are angry at us, and we deserve it. And I think that there's an avenue for those type of characters with women as villains of movies, where it's that righteous anger that
Like Jennifer's Body, like that
like
you
Jennifer's
brought
Body.
that up.
That's a
Yes.
great example.
Yeah, like somebody who is like the destroyer and the consumer, like they're the ones that get to take their power back and seek revenge. So there is something cathartic about it to see that on screen.
Right. Yeah. Even when objectively murdering lots of people is
Right.
bad, but yeah, that whole idea that it's that vengeance is earned somehow, that
Right.
it's deserved, and I think that as white men walking around in the world, straight white men, we're all walking on eggshells, going, yeah, this can't last forever. So, at some point, someone's going to catch on that a lot of the world's problems are our fault, and that we might deserve a little bit of the blowback.
Well, you ask what men are afraid of, and the truth is, they're afraid of everything that women, like, there's not actually a divide there. Men are afraid. Men have insecurities, men have depression, men have all list the different types of issues you can have, men have them as well. I think that there is somewhat of an issue in society where we tell men not to have feelings, and so there's a much bigger thing where women get to have feelings and men don't. But men are just afraid of everything else, and that's why, you do get great stories from men as well. The trick is also empowering women and allowing them, when they take that power, to not be called a bitch or controlling or anything like that. But it's not saying to men to stop having a voice or to stop doing anything that they're doing, to stop expressing themselves, because I do think that actually one of the things that I've been missing and the reason why I worked with the token male director that I did, is I'm just sick of seeing the same thing over and over again from specifically white straight men, but toxic masculinity and abuse of power and these conversations, I would love to understand from a male's perspective in a way that I haven't seen before. I think that's actually very empowering for everybody to understand why certain things are happening. So I think part of feminism and part of empowerment is actually equality and men actually tackling some of those fears.
Yeah, and because an empowered man will empower the women around him too. That's how it works. And with Wonder Woman, what was so awesome was to see little boys dressed as Wonder Woman, and just what that must be like to grow up thinking that's the way you do it. Why not?
Yeah, I want to be the most badass person I can think. Badass person.
Yes.
And that's it. But it's a fun little thing. But I think men are scared. Men are scared of everything.
Yeah.
Definitely scared.
I can speak to that. Okay, so I did want to throw one thing out here. We're going to have a little bit of time at the end for questions. So if you do have questions for people up on the panel, start thinking of them now, make them respectful, and make them, what's the Greek word? Questions. Make sure they start with like how, why, what. We want to get to the question part, not ramble on and on. So start thinking about that. We'll probably in about 5 minutes, we'll start letting people take questions and line up at the mic. Are we set to do that? All right. I'm getting a thumbs up from the back. Okay. I have two daughters. We've mentioned that before. I have a 13-year-old and an 11-year-old. My 13-year-old has informed me she's 14.
It happens.
It is. It's the third day of con. Just cut me some slack here. So,
Never.
I have a 14-year-old, and she has started to watch her first horror films. It's been, that's something that has scared her, and she didn't have a lot of interest, but we watched the fantastic The Haunting of Hill House, which I know there are several people in the room that have connections to that property. Made it all the way through. We talked about it. What kinds of things, if you knew a young woman like my daughter, what kinds of horror projects or things would you say, this is what you should read, this is what you should watch on Netflix, this is what you should go see in the theater? What horror movies speak to young girls that could empower them?
Ooh, I want to know too. I'm listening.
The Innocence is a great one. With
The
Deborah
Innocence?
Carr. The Innocence, yeah, it's 1958, 54, I want to say, something like that.
If you can actually remember the year of that, I know
Right,
50,
it's somewhere.
but that's impressive.
It's, it's cool. It's like this gothic ghost story. It's really messed up.
I just saw Crawl this week with my 13-year-old niece, which was pretty awesome.
wanna see
Just,
that.
a strong, compassionate hero who does not give up. Like, that was a really empowering thing to see together.
Not the Twilight Zone, which again I saw when I was about 8. and I can still have flashbacks. Not The Omen, again, which I saw when I was too young. There are so many things you shouldn't see, right?
I saw Poltergeist very young.
Yeah, me too. That was my entry.
I love that. And I'm obsessed with it. There's
did?
actually an image of it below my TV, of the girl with the hands on the TV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a fraidy cat, man.
Yeah, isn't it fun?
Amityville Horror.
Oh, I can't believe you didn't bring this up. Alien and Terminator 2.
Yeah, assumed.
The
Yeah.
two of the greatest heroines, yes,
Yeah.
of all time.
I didn't want to have to say it, but yeah.
Yeah.
I thought of something. Talking about Alien, which is the original Alien, is a fantastic script. Ripley is such a well-realized character. Does anybody on the panel know the story of how that script was made and how Ripley ended up being so awesome?
No.
We're going to learn some trivia here. When they wrote the script for Alien, it was written with all last names and no gender was assigned to any single character in that script. They did not decide that Ripley was a woman until they cast Sigourney Weaver, and then they went through and they made tweaks. And they didn't think of her as a woman first. They thought of her as an officer on the spacecraft first. And that was how they wrote the script. And then they, of course, being a woman, influenced decisions that were made, during the filming and things. But the character was realized as a competent officer of a spaceship, not as a female. And I thought, what an interesting exercise, and does it have wider applications? Is there something that, does that speak to anybody here?
That's what Helen Mirren said. The BBC made a pledge that by 2019, it was a couple of years ago, that whatever percentage of roles would be for women, and Helen Mirren was like, why not just do it like now? And just change the character, just change the gender.
Yeah.
They finally did that with Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Jodie Whittaker is so good.
I love it.
And there's so many like subtle ways that you can do that. I mean, most characters don't have to have a gender, especially when you're watching like a day player or a guest star on a show, like the Doctor. Would typically be cast as a white male, and now there's a consciousness behind it, and why can't it be X?
Everything by Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
Yes.
It's not so much horror, but God, wouldn't she make a great horror film? But just like she is the most Killing Eve for me is just.
I thought the violence in Killing Eve
Yes.
was the most imaginative, creative, feminine, like the stuff. Like it was the most terrifying thing ever. And it was so particular to the character as well, right?
And I love it. Women of all different backgrounds being seen as gorgeous, empowered. It really doesn't matter about their age. It just matters about who they are. Wow! And they're not shining a light on it either. They're just saying it just should be this, which
Right.
it just should be. And I'm just like, all hail Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
Yes.
There actually have been some cool announcements just recently about, with some franchises hitting gender parity, including one that was just made today. Does everyone know what's going on with Thor? Yeah, some people know it. They just announced today at Thor that they're bringing the female version of Thor. Natalie Portman's coming back to the franchise and is going to be the new Thor, the female version of Thor. And that also, I was just thinking about that and I went, they're also doing it with 007. They have the new Bond movie. There's going to be a new 007, not a new Jane Bond, but there's also these. I keep seeing those opportunities. I keep waiting for Tom Cruise to just break a hip and hand the whole franchise over to Rebecca Ferguson because I love her so much. I'm just like, he's getting, what's he, like 65? Come on, Tom, break something. But because she's so good. But do we think there will be those opportunities of like passing the torch where roles that have traditionally been held by men, in franchises that never seem to end, that there will be that opportunity like what happened with the Doctor?
Yeah, or Mad Max.
Mad Max.
Yeah, Mad Max.
Maybe we'll come up with our own franchises.
Let's just start them new. I don't think we need more.
No need to piggyback.
I think
We can just
original ideas are going to be, I think what's key because everything's just so regurgitated.
So, that gets into some industry issues, though, because I think 9 out of the past 10 top-grossing movies last year were either sequels or reboots, and it gets hard to find space for new material. We all say we want it, and I think we all do want it, but studios are playing it so safe with giant tentpoles. They're so afraid.
That really is, I think, the film world, because I feel like when I started my career, my favorite films were these little art house, early 2000, Miramax was my favorite, all those little $1 million films. You don't have those anymore. Nobody's making, you can't even get them funded. because big movies are being made for $200 million. So that middle tier movie, that $15 to $20 million movie is television. And
Right.
we've got great content on television right now. So I feel
Yeah.
I feel like the audience is getting, new ideas and original ideas.
Right.
So stop going to Star Wars movies. It's never going to happen.
Why do my apple slices at the grocery store have to be Star Wars?
I do feel optimistic that with all the gender fluidity and the sexual fluidity, that eventually it will not even be about male or female, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? It's there, it's on the
Anybody else in
horizon.
the Congress?
It'll just be human
We
stories.
turn into a color? That's great. So it loses it a little bit. It's fantastic.
Okay, I think we're getting close. Is there anything that?
thing to go out on.
Well, we have 15 minutes, so we're going all the way to 9:30. All right, well, game on, man. So we're going back into this. I forgot there's not another panel after this, so we can go all the way to 9:30. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the final girl trope, because we touched on it a couple times, and it's just famous film theory that someone who's smarter than me on the panel will know who came up with it, but the idea that horror movies have this virginal female character as a protagonist, and that she will be the only one that lives at the end, survives Freddy or Jason, but she has to suffer greatly all the way through. And the way that the reason that she survives is because she's virginally pure. If you have sex, it's naughty and dirty, and you're going to get a machete through the chest.
Yeah.
Are we moving past the point where we have to mix female sexuality and that whole idea that it's in some way bad and wrong and deserving of death? Because that has been a trope really in the 70s and 80s, pretty bad. So
It's kind of in Stranger Things, right? In the first season, right?
did anybody who had?
It exists. I think it's still there, right?
But Beth dies. She didn't hook up with anybody.
yeah.
She was
Yeah.
minding her own business, waiting for a friend.
Barb.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, but usually it's the person having sex who's punished. And it's also just, at this point, it's just really boring. Like, I can only watch that so many times until it just loses all artistic merit, if it had any to begin with.
I was hoping Scream kind of put a nail in that coffin, because
Well,
they
it's self-aware,
laid it out bare. They had the
Yeah.
whole thing where at the end of the movie she had sex, and then the villain's taunting her with the final girl trope. You had sex, now you have to die.
Yeah.
And she basically gave him a middle finger and beat him up. So I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, that was cool.
Scream is a great movie. I know it didn't have a lot of women behind the scenes, but I did enjoy how it kind of subverted the tropes and genres that it kind of defined horror films up until that point.
Yeah,
Totally.
I think, like you say, once people become aware of it, then you do want to transcend it, and what people want is something more complicated and more real, and you do want to see the ugly sides of people, and that doesn't necessarily make them the bad guy or deserving of anything more than anyone else. Like, what you want to see is a character with depth and dimension. So a final girl, there is something that's just one-dimensional about a character like that, who's only emotional or who doesn't have depth beyond purity. Like,
Right.
that is boring.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. If people have questions, we need to take them now, because I've just been informed, no, I was right the first time, we only have 5 minutes. They were wrong when they had put up that 15-minute sign. So does anyone in the audience, there is a microphone in the center so that we can all hear you? Not everyone at once. Yep, run up.
Yes?
Yeah?
Hi, my name is Caitlin, and I am a middle school teacher. And so my question for you guys is kind of vague, I guess, but do you have any advice that I could pass on to my young girls who are growing up in a post-2016 world?
Watch Tank
Move
Girl.
forward and
Tell them to
strong.
watch Tank Girl.
Tank
They'll
Girl,
learn
yeah.
so much. It's great.
Yeah.
I love that you love that.
Yeah,
best.
I think that there's a lot of new content that is coming out for women. Like I said, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, everything that she does, just everybody obsess over that and watch it like I do over and over and over and over again. No, but I think that there's a lot of good content, and the nice thing is there's a lot of places that you can go because of Hulu and Netflix and everything else. But honestly, just speak your truth is the most important thing, because it's not just about what's being said, but we need new people to say things. And especially if you're in middle school, you got a lot of feelings and a lot of things to say. So, yeah.
Also, if you're a middle school teacher, tell them to read lots of books and learn about history.
Yeah.
Just,
I do.
Yeah.
English,
That's
and
like,
they know how obsessed with horror I am, so they
Nice.
talk to me about that. So.
yeah.
Awesome.
That's a good, yeah.
Thanks.
course. I have 4 daughters, so three daughters, and I enjoy strong female roles. Do people you meet outside of the sets get confused and think of you as evil or violent, or do you ever see people that look at you in a way like in your shopping center and you go, wow, that person looked at me kind of weird, like, and like they're confused with the person with the television
Character.
or
I
something?
wish I got recognized like that.
I get that, but nobody's recognizing anything.
I'd love it if someone stopped me in the supermarket.
With our fandom, the supernatural fandom, we're so interactive. We do so many conventions. We're online so much that actually, I feel very much people see me. I do. So that's nice, because otherwise I would probably be in danger.
Well,
Grave danger.
I remember when I got the role on Supernatural, I had just come from another genre show, Stargate, and the fandom was very vocal about our entity of the Stargate franchise, and they were not very pleasant. So I had also come from Smallville, and it had some sort of mixed feelings about that whole universe. And so when I got the role on Supernatural, I was really afraid. I was like, oh my God, I'm playing this bad guy in a very vocal group. And then I went to my first convention, and they loved me. I was like, I don't know what this is, but it's awesome. But I will say, people will be on Twitter or something early on, and they'd be like, oh, well, my mom said I can't talk to you because you're a bad guy. I was like, no, I'm not. I'm a mom. I have 4 kids. I'm a person. So yeah, it does get confusing.
Tell your mom it's just a TV show.
Yeah. But it can be confusing. I remember reading the story of the actor who played, in Game of Thrones, Joffrey. He quit because he was getting so much negativity from the fandom. So it can really affect you.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's on that level. I mean,
Okay, then the next thing is if you have a slasher scene or a murder scene or you're killing someone, do you ever have a dream where you're in it yourself? I mean, out off the set, do you have a dream at night that you're doing this?
Okay, I have to interrupt just 1 second. This is going to be the
Once again,
last
no.
question, okay? We have to wrap up. They're closing us down.
Where did the middle school teacher go? The Craft. I'm sorry, it just jumped into my head. We are the weirdos, mister. I mean, God.
The Craft is canon, for sure.
Got it, sorry. And Scream. I mean, guess.
Yeah.
Anyways,
and no.
Okay, guys, I think we're going to have to wrap this up. So everyone, just quick rundown. Let's mention one more time where they're going to see you next, because there are some cool people doing cool projects that are coming up right now. We're going to do a brief photo afterwards with the panel, and then everyone has to jet because we got places to be and people to see. So, all right. So what are we going to see you guys in? And I know the answer, but let's do this.
Okay, we have Dr. Sleep
Dr.
coming
Sleep!
out November 8th.
you'll see me in nothing. But I have Neurotica, the series, coming out with Karen Gillan and Laura Moss. I have Peopling, as The Soul Collector, and I have a couple of other things coming up later this year. But Laura Moss, Karen Gillan, Anissa Kirshi are all 3 female directors that you need to see.
Awesome. You can see my new movie, The Perfection. It just premiered last month on Netflix.
You can see the last ever season of Supernatural. And also I have a little web series that I appear in at the end called Spellagram. So yeah, give that a little look on YouTube if you get the chance.
Thank you all.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming out. We really appreciate it. Yeah, I hope.